The star charts of every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy showed the same thing. A large region of space marked in red. The color of blood. The color of warning. The color that meant death. They called it the Terran Exclusion Zone, human space. The Forbidden Corridor. For 300 years, no ship had crossed it and returned to tell the story. At least, that was what everyone believed. Cargo vessels added months to their journeys, rather than take the shortcut through human territory. Military fleets refused to use it even during desperate wars. Traders lost fortunes because they would not risk the passage. The stories had grown over the centuries. Mothers told their children about the humans who ate souls. Soldiers whispered about weapons that could tear apart entire fleets in seconds. Scientists theorized about technology so advanced that it seemed like dark magic. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody wanted to find out. Ambassador Kethrix of the Villani hegemony had heard all the stories. He was old now, his scales fading from bright blue to pale gray. His career had been long but unremarkable. He had spent 40 years negotiating minor trade agreements and attending ceremonies that meant nothing. He was ready to retire to his homeworld and watch his grandchildren grow. Then, the transmission arrived. It came through official channels, verified by 17 different authentication systems. A human voice, speaking in perfect galactic common, calm and ancient and strange. The message was simple. The humans invited the Galactic Concord to send a diplomatic envoy through their space. After 3 centuries of silence, they wanted to talk. The Concord debated for 3 weeks. The great powers argued and threatened and accused each other of planning tricks. The Villani hegemony said it was obviously a trap. The Creth Dominion said they should send a massive fleet to show strength. The Merchant Guild said they should ignore it completely. In the end, someone had to go. Someone expendable. Someone whose death would not start a war. Kethrix volunteered. His colleagues thought he had gone mad. His family begged him to reconsider. His superiors quietly approved the mission, already writing his memorial speech in their heads. The old ambassador simply packed a small bag, boarded his diplomatic vessel, and set course for human space. The ship was called the Whisper of Caution. It was a good name, Kethrix thought, as he watched the stars slide past his window. The vessel was small and lightly armed, designed for diplomacy rather than combat. It carried a crew of 12, all of whom had volunteered, knowing they might never return. The journey to the border took 8 days. Kethrix spent most of that time reading every scrap of information the Concord had about humans. There was very little. Old records from before the silence. Blurry images of strange, soft-skinned creatures with no scales, no claws, no natural weapons at all. They had seemed so weak when they first appeared on the galactic stage. Then ships started disappearing, and the stories began. On the 9th day, the Whisper of Caution crossed the border into human space. Kethrix sat in the command chair, his claws gripping the armrests. The crew held their breath. The sensors swept the darkness ahead, searching for the weapons that would destroy them, the ships that would hunt them down. The death that everyone said was waiting. They found nothing. Empty space stretched before them. Stars burned in the distance, but no ships approached. No weapons locked onto their hull. No voices demanded surrender or threatened destruction. The Whisper of Caution drifted forward, alone and untouched, into the most feared region of the galaxy. Hours passed. Then a full day. The crew began to relax, though Kethrix could see the confusion in their eyes. This was not what anyone had expected. Where were the terrible human warships? Where were the automated defense systems? Where was the danger that had kept the entire galaxy away for 300 years? On the 2nd day, inside human space, a small vessel appeared on their sensors. It was tiny, barely larger than a shuttle. It carried no visible weapons. It moved slowly toward them, broadcasting a simple greeting. Welcome to human space. We are honored by your visit. Please follow us to Sanctuary Station. The crew looked at Kethrix. He could see the fear in their faces, mixed now with something else. Curiosity, hope, doubt. He nodded slowly, and the whisper of caution fell into formation behind the human escort. They traveled for 3 more days. The human vessel led them through systems that showed no signs of military presence. They passed planets covered in green and blue, clearly inhabited but showing no defensive platforms or orbital weapons. They saw stations in the distance, but they were civilian structures, trading posts and research facilities, not fortresses. Kethrix began to feel something stirring in his chest. It took him a while to recognize it. He had not felt it in many years, thought it was wonder. On the 3rd day, they arrived at Sanctuary Station. It hung in orbit around a quiet yellow star, and it was massive. Kethrix had seen many stations in his long life, military bases and trading hubs and government centers. This was different. This was beautiful. Great domes of glass and metal caught the starlight and threw it back in rainbow patterns. Gardens were visible through transparent walls, filled with plants of 100 different colors. Ships of dozens of different designs docked at ports around the station's edge, none of them warships. As they approached, Kethrix could see figures moving behind the windows. Not just humans. He recognized shapes from species he had thought were extinct, races that had vanished from the galaxy long ago. His communicator crackled. The same calm voice from before. Ambassador Kethrix. Welcome to Sanctuary. Director Chun is waiting to meet you. She has much to explain, and we believe you will want to hear it. The old ambassador stood up from his chair. His legs felt weak. His heart beat fast. Everything he thought he knew was about to change. He could feel it in his bones. Open the docking port, he said to his crew. I think it is time we learn the truth. The whisper of caution connected to Sanctuary Station with a soft click. The airlock doors opened. Warm air flowed in, carrying the smell of flowers and growing things. Somewhere in the distance, Kethrix could hear the sound of children laughing. He stepped forward into human space, and nothing tried to kill him. That was the first surprise of many. Director Amara Chun was waiting for him at the end of a long corridor filled with plants. She was small, even for a human. Her hair was white with age, and her skin was dark and lined with years. But her eyes were sharp and bright, and when she smiled, Kethrix felt something in his chest relax. Ambassador, she said, extending her hand in the human greeting. Thank you for coming. I know it was not easy. Kethrix took her hand carefully. Human skin was so soft, so fragile. No scales, no armor, nothing to protect them from harm. How had such weak creatures become the terror of the galaxy? I expected to die, he admitted. Everyone said I would. Chun nodded. Everyone says many things about us. Most of it is not true. Come, walk with me. I want to show you something. She led him through the station. Kethrix had prepared himself for military bases, weapons factories, prison cells. Instead, he found libraries, schools, hospitals, art galleries filled with paintings and sculptures from dozens of different worlds. Children ran past them, laughing and playing, and Kethrix saw that they were not all human. Some had scales like his own. Some had fur. Some had 6 limbs or wings or bodies made of crystal. Who are these people? He asked. Refugees, Chun said simply. Survivors. The lost and the forgotten. The ones your galactic concord threw away. They stopped at a large window overlooking a garden. Kethrix could see hundreds of beings working among the plants, harvesting food, tending to flowers, talking and laughing together. He recognized some of the species. The Mreshi, with their silver fur and gentle eyes. He had read about them in history files. They were supposed to be extinct, hunted to the last by the Kreth Dominion for their valuable neural tissue. The Mreshi live here, Chun said, following his gaze. All 12,000 of them. The last of their kind. Kethrix felt cold. That is impossible. They were destroyed 200 years ago. They were nearly destroyed. A few hundred escaped. They came to us begging for help. We took them in. Chum turned to face him. That is what we do, Ambassador. That is what we have always done. She led him deeper into the station. She showed him the Quelith, a species of miners whose homeworld had been stripped bare by the merchant guilds. She showed him the singing crystals of Veth-4, living beings made of mineral and light, hunted for their beauty. She showed him the Vaiskari, the Hollow People, the Children of Dust, 23 species that the galaxy had tried to erase from existence, all of them alive. All of them hidden in human space. 300 years ago, Chun said, we came out into the galaxy. We were excited. We thought we would find wonders. Instead, we found cruelty. Empires that crushed the weak. Species that enslaved others. Civilizations destroyed for profit. The strong took everything, and the weak died. They entered a quiet room. It was a memorial, Kethrix realized. The walls were covered with images of worlds and species, some that he knew, many that he did not. Names and dates and short descriptions. A history of loss. The refugees started coming to us, Chun continued. First a few, then hundreds, then thousands. They had heard that humans were different, that we did not conquer or enslave, that we helped those in need. They came to us because they had nowhere else to go. Kethrix stared at the memorial wall. His throat felt tight. But you are weak, he said. Forgive me, but it is true. Humans have no natural weapons, no great military strength. How could you protect anyone? Chum smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and proud at the same time. We could not, she said. That was the problem. We wanted to help, but we knew that if the great powers learned what we were doing, they would come for us. They would take back the refugees. They would punish us for interfering. We were too small to fight them. So what did you do? We lied. The word hung in the air between them. Kethrix felt his scales prickle with confusion. We could not be strong, Chun explained. So we made them think we were. We created stories. We spread rumors. We built a legend of terror around ourselves. The humans became monsters in the minds of the galaxy, and no one dared to come close enough to learn the truth. She walked to a console and pressed a few buttons. A holographic display appeared, showing the border of human space. Red warning markers flashed at every entry point. We scattered debris from our own old ships along the borders. We broadcast fake distress signals that cut off mid-scream. We created sensor ghosts of massive weapons platforms that did not exist. We let survivors escape from time to time, survivors who told wild stories of impossible technology and terrible power. Kethrix watched the display, his mind racing. The ships that disappeared never existed, Chun said. Or they were refugee vessels fleeing into our space. We welcomed them. We gave them new lives. And we let the galaxy think they had been destroyed. The ambassador sat down heavily on a bench. His legs would not hold him anymore. 300 years of fear. 300 years of nightmares. 300 years of the galaxy's children crying about human monsters hiding in the dark. All of it a lie. We never harmed anyone, Chun said softly. We never fired a shot in anger. We are not warriors, Ambassador. We are caretakers. We are protectors. We are the keepers of the lost. Why tell me this now? Kethrix asked. Why reveal the truth after all this time? Chun's face grew serious. She looked older suddenly, tired in a way that had nothing to do with her years. Because we cannot hide anymore, she said. 300 years of refugees have become billions of souls. Our space is crowded. Our resources are running low. We need help, Ambassador. We need the galaxy to know the truth. She extended her hand again, and this time Kethrix understood that she was not greeting him. She was asking him for something. We need you to speak for us, she said. We need you to tell them what you have seen. We need you to help us end the lie. Kethrix looked at her hand. He thought about the children playing in the corridors. He thought about the Mreshi in the garden, the last 12,000 of their kind. He thought about every species the galaxy had thrown away, every people his own civilization had helped to destroy. He took her hand. Tell me everything, he said. Tell me how the lie was built so I can help you tear it down. Director Chun took Kethrix to a room deep in the heart of Sanctuary Station. It was called the Archive, and it held the history of humanity's greatest trick. The walls were covered with screens showing old recordings, maps with carefully placed false data, audio files of screams that had been created in studios, images of destruction that had never happened. 300 years of deception, organized and cataloged like a museum of lies. We started small, Chun explained. The first refugees came from a species called the Velith. They were farmers, peaceful people. The Kreth Dominion wanted their world for mining. The Velith had nowhere to go. She pulled up an image on one of the screens. A beautiful green planet covered in fields and forests. Then another image, the same planet burning. A Velith trading ship found us by accident. They were desperate. They said their world was being destroyed, that their people were being killed. They asked if we could take in the survivors. Kethrix watched the images change. Refugee ships arriving at human stations. Families stepping off vessels with nothing but the clothes they wore. Children crying for parents who would never come. We took them in, Chung continued. All of them. 14,000 Velith, the last of their kind. But we knew we had created a problem. The Kreth would come looking for them. They would want to finish what they started. She walked to another section of the archive. This one showed technical diagrams, ships, weapons platforms, sensor systems. One of our engineers came up with the idea. Her name was Yuki Tanaka. She said that if we could not be strong, we could pretend to be. She designed the first false weapons platform. It was just metal and lights, nothing more. But on sensors, it looked like something terrible. The hologram showed the platform. It was huge, covered in things that looked like weapons. Kethrix could see how it would frighten anyone who saw it. We put the platform at the border. Then we sent a message to the Kreth ship that was searching for the Velith. We told them that human space was protected. We told them that any ship that crossed our borders would be destroyed. Then we activated the platform. Chun smiled at the memory. The Kreth ship ran. It ran so fast that it nearly burned out its engines. The captain sent a report to his superiors describing impossible weapons. The story spread. Over the next few hours, Chun showed him how the lie had grown. Every piece had been carefully planned. Every story had been designed to build a legend. Human agents had traveled to alien stations and told tales of horror in quiet corners. They spoke of friends who had entered human space and never returned. They described weapons that could tear apart atoms, ships that moved faster than light, soldiers who felt no fear and no mercy. None of it was true. All of it was believed. When ships actually did enter human space, the humans let them see just enough to be terrified. They would detect the sensor ghosts of massive fleets. They would hear distress calls from ships that had never existed. They would find debris floating in space, wreckage from old human vessels that had been dismantled and scattered for exactly this purpose. Most of the intruders turned back and ran. The ones who did not found only empty space and quiet stars. But they never told anyone the truth. They were too ashamed to admit that they had found nothing. So they invented stories of their own, making the legend even bigger. Fear is the cheapest weapon there is, Chun said. It costs nothing to make someone afraid. And afraid people do the work for you. They imagine horrors worse than anything you could create. They tell stories to each other. They believe their own nightmares. Kethrix thought about the stories he had heard as a child. The humans who could read minds. The humans who ate the souls of their enemies. The human ships that appeared from nowhere and left nothing behind but silence. None of it was real, he said. None of it was real, Chun agreed. We are not monsters, Ambassador. We are teachers and healers and gardeners. We raise children and grow food and study the stars. We have no great weapons. We have no terrible secrets. We have only a reputation that we built from shadows and whispers. She took him to another part of the archive. This section was different. It was a memorial to the species that humanity had saved. 23 names on the wall. 23 peoples who would have been erased from the universe. The Mreshi, the Queleth, the Singing Crystals, the Veleth, the Hollow People. Each name had a number beside it. A population count. Kethrix added them up in his head. The total was staggering. 4 billion souls, Chun said. That is how many people live in human space now. Most of them are not human. Most of them are the children and grandchildren of refugees. We have built homes for them. Schools, hospitals, farms, cities. A civilization inside the Forbidden Zone. 4 billion, Kethrix repeated. The number was too big to understand. We cannot hide them anymore, Chun said. We have run out of space. We have run out of resources. The lie protected us for 300 years, but now it is killing us. We need to trade with the galaxy. We need to travel freely. We need to be part of the Concord, not a nightmare on its maps. She turned to face him. Her old eyes were filled with something Kethrix could not name. Hope, perhaps, or desperation. That is why we called you here. That is why we revealed the truth. We need someone to speak for us. Someone the Concord will trust. Someone who can tell them that the humans were never dangerous. That we were just trying to protect the ones nobody else would save. Kethrix looked at the wall of names. He thought about what the Concord would do when they learned the truth. Some would be angry. Some would be ashamed. Some would want revenge for being tricked, and some would want to take back the refugees. To finish the work that had started centuries ago. If I tell them the truth, he said slowly, there will be those who see weakness. Those who will want to attack. Yes, Chun said. We know. You have no way to defend yourselves. We know that too. Then why take this risk? Chun walked to the memorial wall. She placed her hand on one of the names. The Veleth. The first refugees. The beginning of everything. Because we cannot let them live in hiding forever, she said. Because children deserve to see stars that are not surrounded by lies. Because the universe should know that kindness exists, even in the darkest places. She turned back to Kethrix. Her voice was steady. We have carried this secret for 300 years. We have protected 4 billion lives with nothing but stories and shadows. Now we are asking you to help us take the next step. Will you? Kethrix thought about his own people. The Vellani hegemony had never been the worst of the Concord. But they had never been the best either. They had looked away when species were destroyed. They had traded with slavers. They had benefited from the cruelty of others. Maybe it was time for that to change. I will need proof, he said. Records, testimony, evidence that the Concord cannot ignore. Chun nodded. We have prepared everything. 300 years of truth, ready to be revealed. Then let us begin, Ketherick said. I have a story to tell. The grand chamber of the Galactic Concord had not been this full in decades. Representatives from every major power filled the seats. The Kreth Dominion in their black armor. The merchant guilds in their expensive robes. The Stellar Republic with their cold, calculating eyes. Dozens of smaller nations and alliances crowded the upper galleries, all of them staring at the old Velani, ambassador standing alone in the center of the floor. Ketherix had been speaking for 3 hours. He had shown them the recordings from Sanctuary Station. He had played the testimonies of refugee leaders. He had displayed the evidence of humanity's deception, piece by piece, until the truth was impossible to deny. Human space had never been dangerous. The humans had never killed anyone. The entire legend was a lie, built to protect the helpless from the powerful. The chamber erupted. They made fools of us. The Kreth Admiral slammed his fist against his seat. For 300 years we feared shadows. We rerouted entire fleets. We lost wars because we would not cross their space. Worse than that, said a representative from the merchant guilds. They stole from us. Those refugees were ours. The Quelithmyres, the Mreshi workers. They were valuable property. Property? Ketherix kept his voice calm. You call people property? They belong to us by right of conquest. The guild representative did not seem ashamed. The humans had no right to take them. This is theft on a galactic scale. The arguments grew louder. Some demanded immediate invasion. The humans were weak, they said. Their defenses were fake. Their weapons were lies. A single fleet could crush them in days and reclaim everything they had taken. Others were confused, uncertain. They had spent their entire lives believing the stories. Some of them had lost family to human space, or thought they had. Now they learned that those family members might still be alive, living peacefully among the humans, hidden from a galaxy that would have destroyed them. But there was a third group. They sat quietly, listening to the shouting, and Ketherix watched them carefully. These were the ones who asked the question that nobody wanted to face. A young representative from a small world called Tessari finally stood up. She was barely old enough to hold her position, but her voice was steady. I have heard the arguments for war, she said. I have heard the demands for revenge. But I have not heard anyone ask the most important question. The chamber grew quiet. The young representative looked around at the assembled powers of the galaxy. Why did they come to the humans? Silence. 4 billion souls, she continued. 23 species. They did not come to us. They did not ask the Concord for help. They ran to the humans because they were afraid of us. Because we were the ones hunting them. Because we were the danger they needed protection from. The Kreth Admiral started to speak, but the young representative kept going. The humans built a legend of terror around themselves. They made the galaxy believe they were monsters. And we believed it because we knew what monsters look like. We believed it because we are monsters. The humans just held up a mirror, and we saw ourselves. The chamber exploded again. Accusations flew back and forth. Some called the young representative a traitor. Others shouted that she was right. The high speaker of the Concord had to call for order 5 times before the noise died down. Ketherix waited until he could speak again. The humans have asked for one thing, he said. They want to join the Concord as a member state. They want their refugees to be recognized as citizens with full rights. They want the lies to end and the truth to begin. And if we refuse? The Kreth Admiral leaned forward. If we send a fleet instead of diplomats? Then you prove that they were right to hide from you, Ketherick said. You prove that the galaxy is exactly as cruel as they believed. You prove that kindness has no place among the stars. Kindness is weakness, the Admiral growled. Is it? Ketherick turned to face him directly. The humans have survived for 300 years with nothing but cleverness and compassion. They have protected 4 billion lives without firing a single shot. They have built a civilization inside the territory that we were all too afraid to enter. And now they stand before us, asking for peace, while we debate whether to destroy them for making fools of us. He looked around the chamber. Old faces, young faces, faces of every species and every world. I have been a diplomat for 40 years, he said. I have seen treaties made and broken. I have watched wars start over nothing and peace collapse over pride. But I have never seen anything like the humans. They could have hidden forever. They could have let the lie continue. Instead, they reached out to us, knowing that we might destroy them, because they believed that some of us might choose differently. He took a breath. I am asking you to prove them right. The vote was called. It took 2 days for all the representatives to decide. The Kreth Dominion voted for war. So did several other powers who had lost property to human space. The merchant guilds voted for economic sanctions. They wanted compensation for their stolen workers. But when the final count came in, the vote was close. So very close, by a margin of 3 votes. The Concord chose not to attack. It was not peace. Not yet. The Concord approved a compromise proposal. A fleet would be sent to the border of human space, but not to invade. It would stand guard while negotiations continued. The humans would be allowed to send representatives. The refugees would be given temporary protection while their status was debated. It was messy. It was complicated. It was not the victory that anyone wanted, but it was not war. Ketherick watched the final vote tally appear on the screens of the Grand Chamber. He felt old and tired and strangely hopeful. The young representative from Tessari caught his eye across the chamber and nodded. 3 votes. That was all that separated destruction from survival. 3 minds changed. 3 people who looked at the truth and chose to be better than the stories the humans had told about them. Ketherick thought about Director Chan, waiting in Sanctuary Station with her 4 billion souls. He thought about the children playing in the corridors, the gardens full of refugees, the memorial wall with 23 names. He sent a message to human space. It was short. The war fleet will not attack. They are coming to talk instead. Please be ready. The hard part is just beginning. The response came back quickly, in Chun's steady voice. We have been ready for 300 years. Thank you, Ambassador, for believing us. Ketherick closed his eyes. Tomorrow the real negotiations would begin. Tomorrow the refugees would have to face the galaxy that had tried to destroy them. Tomorrow everything would be complicated and difficult and uncertain. But tonight, nobody was going to die. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The negotiations lasted for 2 years. They were the hardest years of Ketherick's long life. Every day brought new arguments, new demands, new threats. The Kreth Dominion wanted the Mreshi returned to them. The merchant guilds demanded payment for the workers they had lost. Smaller powers made their own claims, reaching back through centuries of records to find species they said belonged to them. The humans refused everything. Director Chun stood before the Concord Assembly again and again, her white hair growing thinner, her face growing more lined, but her voice never wavering. She spoke for the refugees. She told their stories. She made the galaxy look at what it had done. The Mreshi came forward first. Their leader was a young female named Silvara, born on Sanctuary Station, the daughter of survivors. She stood in the Grand Chamber and described what her people had suffered. The haunts, the killings, The children torn from their mothers so their neural tissue could be harvested for Kreth technology. When she finished speaking, the Kreth Admiral could not meet her eyes. The Quel'Ath came next. They showed images of their homeworld before and after the merchant guilds arrived. Beautiful mountains turned to empty pits. Rivers poisoned. Forests burned. A civilization reduced to rubble so the corporations could extract profit from the ground. One by one, the refugee species told their stories. The singing crystals played a song of mourning that made half the chamber weep. The hollow people showed the scars where their bodies had been used for experiments. The children of dust described how their world had been sterilized, every living thing killed, because their biology was considered a contamination risk. The galaxy listened. Some refused to hear. Some walked out of the chamber. But others stayed. Others began to understand. The Sanctuary Accords were signed on the second anniversary of Ketheric's first visit to human space. They were not perfect. They were full of compromises and exceptions and language that politicians could argue about for decades. But they established basic principles that had never existed before. The refugee species were recognized as free peoples. They could not be claimed as property. They could not be hunted or enslaved. They had the right to live in human space or to travel the galaxy as they chose. With the protection of the Concord, the Terran exclusion zone was officially dissolved. Human space became open territory, a waypoint between the great powers rather than a wall of fear. Trade ships began to pass through within months. Tourists came to see Sanctuary Station, to walk in the gardens, to meet the species they had thought were missed. Not everyone was happy. The Kreth Dominion refused to sign the accords. They withdrew from several Concord agreements and increased their military spending. The merchant guilds demanded economic compensation that the humans could not pay. Tensions remained high in some sectors, but the war never came. 5 years after the accords, Director Chun addressed the Concord one final time. She was very old now, supported by a walking frame, but she insisted on standing. 300 years ago, she said, my ancestors made a choice. They saw a galaxy full of cruelty, and they decided to be different. They could not change the universe. They could not stop the powerful from crushing the weak. So they did the only thing they could do. They built a shelter and filled it with lies. She paused, looking around the chamber at the faces of 100 species. We knew we could not fight you. We knew we could not change you. So we gave you a mirror instead. A space on your maps where you drew your own nightmares. Everything you feared we would do, you feared because you knew what you were capable of. We did not create monsters. We just let you imagine what you would have done with our power. The chamber was silent. Chun continued. The lie is over now. Human space is just space. Our borders are open. Our weapons are revealed for what they always were, shadows and tricks, and the desperate hope that nobody would call our bluff. We have nothing left to hide behind. She smiled, and despite her age, there was something fierce in her eyes. But you know what? I think we will be all right. Because the lie taught us something important. It taught us that stories can change the world. It taught us that fear is powerful, but so is hope. It taught us that even the weakest hands can shape the future, if they are willing to be clever. She looked directly at the recording devices, knowing that her words would be broadcast across the galaxy. We held back the darkness for 300 years with nothing but our imagination. Now we are asking you to imagine something new. A galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of destroying them. A galaxy where refugees are welcomed instead of hunted. A galaxy where kindness is not weakness, but wisdom. She turned to leave, then stopped. The humans never crossed the line you drew around us. We stayed in our space and raised our children and kept our secrets. But the line was never really there. It was just an idea. And ideas can change. She walked out of the chamber. She died 8 months later, peacefully, in a garden on Sanctuary Station, surrounded by children of 12 different species. The statue they built of her still stands at the main entrance to the station. Tourists come from across the galaxy to see it. Underneath, there is a plaque with words she spoke during the negotiations. They called us monsters for 300 years. We let them. It was easier than explaining that we were the only ones who weren't. Kethrix lived another 20 years after the Accords. He spent them as humanity's ambassador to the Concord, the old Villani diplomat who had walked into the Forbidden Zone and found only gardens. He watched the refugee species rebuild their cultures. He watched human ships travel freely through the galaxy for the first time. He watched his own people change, slowly, painfully, beginning to question the old ways. On his deathbed, surrounded by his family, he was asked what he wanted to be remembered for. He thought about it for a long time. "I want to be remembered as the one who believed them," he said finally. "When the humans told me the truth, I could have rejected it. I could have called it a trick. I could have gone back to the Concord and demanded war. But I chose to believe that people could be kind without wanting something in return. I chose to believe that the lie was told for good reasons. I chose to believe that the galaxy could be better than its worst instincts." He closed his eyes. The humans won their gamble because one old diplomat decided to trust them. Remember that. Trust can change everything. He died that night, and they buried him in the garden on Sanctuary Station next to Director Chun. Under stars that no longer held any fear, the legend of human space never completely faded. Spacers still told stories about the Forbidden Zone, passing the tailies from ship to ship, generation to generation. But the stories changed over time. They became less about terror and more about wonder. Less about the monsters humans might have been, and more about the miracle they actually were. A species with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons at all. A people so weak that they could not fight the galaxy's smallest war. And yet they had won. They had won with nothing but stories, nothing but kindness, nothing but the wild, impossible belief that if they pretended to be monsters long enough, they might buy enough time for the truth to matter. The lie had protected them, but in the end, the truth had set them free, and the galaxy, slowly, painfully, began to learn how to be worthy of it.